as we know, the more advanced we get technologically, the less we become knowledgeable, because sometimes you work harder when when things are harder to access. But when it's right, easier tips, you kind of become complacent and lazy, you know?
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa thana'u lillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. On another episode on Da'wah Center, talking about general topics that we face as a community at large, as an ummah. So today we have a guest, Sheikh Abdullahi Bihi from Minnesota, United States of America, and he has given us his presence and a nice visit from him. So Jazakallah khair for being here, Sheikh. Jazakallah khairan. I known you since from Medina. Alhamdulillah, I'm glad we've had that relationship up until now.
Jazakallah khair.
That you even actually came to visit us.
Barakallah fiik.
Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair for the generous host.
Allah yabarak feekum.
Yeah, I understand.
So, Sheikh, take us through the challenges that the youth face in this time and age when it comes to the identity.
In terms of the identity, there's a huge identity crisis amongst youth. And that identity crisis stems from a number of issues. But I would say largely is due to ignorance. Ignorance of their heritage, firstly, in terms of from an Islamic perspective, and ignorance from their traditional background, in terms of where they come from. Both are important because both complement each other, right? And if you only have one, you're at risk. Although the Islamic side is the most important one and the only one that really matters, but the other one serves as a safety net. So a person, when they don't know their Islamic heritage, they don't know the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, they don't know the qisas of the Anbiya and the stories of the different prophets, they don't know the Sahaba or the Tabi'een or some of the historical figures, or how we got to this stage as Muslims from a political perspective, from a financial and social perspective. If you don't know that, how do you have an identity? You don't even know where you come from. On top of that, you add the lack of knowledge when it comes to your traditional background, your ancestry, your lineage, where you come from, your heritage. That's what really contributes to an identity crisis. Among other challenges, among other issues, but I would say that would be number one, and that is ignorance. Ignorance of who you are. Because if you're ignorant of who you are, and that's actually something that is pushed to not care about where you come from, or who you are, or your religion, that is something that is pushed, and that leads to identity crisis, to the point that you see a lot of youth, they don't have a legacy. They are just kind of coasting through life.
And subhanallah, what you just mentioned is actually something that is very general when it comes, it's not something that is, a problem that is geographically on a specific area. When it comes to the West, because you're from there, I'm from Kenya. But, the irony is you're talking about this, and it's things that youth from Kenya and the West and all around the world are facing.
Yeah. I mean, the globe has become a village, as they say.
Yes.
Now it's like a room.
It's like a room.
Yeah.
People connect on social media, and people tend to have, two different lives, the social media life, and outside social media life. Do you think social media has played a part in that?
Oh yeah, definitely. Social media, the internet, anything technology related, all right, all that has played a huge role in terms of the brainwashing of humans in general, because certain messages are being put throughout, and one of the causes of that is an identity crisis, and that is something that is intentional. So a Muslim must know that you being ignorant of your religion in terms from a historical perspective, or you being ignorant of your tradition and your background, that is not something that's praiseworthy. That is blameworthy. And as one of the scholars he mentioned, there are three things that Islam came to protect, right? Al-isnad, wal-ansab, wal-i'rab. Chain of narration in terms of who your teacher is, who your sheikh is. So let me ask every young person, who did you study Islam under? A lot will tell you, I don't know. Some will tell you, yeah, I know who he is, but who did he study under? Where does your chain of narration go back to? Does it go back to the Prophet ﷺ? You have to have teachers that you have to know who your teacher studied under, right? If you even studied with a teacher.
Yes.
Your ansab, your lineage. Who's your father? Who's your grandfather? A lot of people, they're like, I don't know who my grandfather is. Would your grandfather be proud? If you had a grandson, would your grandson or your granddaughter, would she be proud? Like, imagine they don't know you and they do proud of you. You have to know where you come from.
It's like you never existed before.
It's like never existed before. And al-i'rab, and that is eloquence. And that comes from learning language skills, right? And specifically the Arabic language, knowing the Arabic language. If you don't know the Arabic language, you'll have a tough time navigating in Islam because you have no relationship with the Quran or the Sunnah except through translations. That's if you even get to a translation. Translations, although it's a nice alternative, that should be a short-term fix. It's not something that is supposed to be dependent on long-term. So you see that those three matters really contribute to an identity crisis. The lack of chain of narration, the lack of knowing your lineage, which both go back to not knowing your history and your traditional background, and not having language skills to communicate between different people from different walks of life, and being able to spread the message of Islam to different people.
Yes, yes, definitely. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. You know, like the best of people, you know, in speech are those who call upon to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they do righteous deeds, and they say, we are from the Muslims.
Yani they're proud of being Muslims. Yeah, I'm a Muslim.
Yes.
What you gonna do about it? I'm here. And then they give da'wah, right?
Like a few years back.
And he does good. He has good character. He has good ta'amul, right? And he worships Allah Azza wa Jal. So those three things really is a profound ayah. I mean, that's a positive thing. We talked about the negative identity crisis.
Yeah.
There is a positive side of people, I mean, I don't know if some of it might be trends.
Yes.
But you do see, I don't know if this is true in Kenya, there is a iltizam wahid, all right?
Yes.
Like people outwardly more practicing compared to 10 years ago,
Yes.
perhaps. But does that translate to real practicing, or is it just a madhar? Is it for social media posts? Is it to be seen? Is it to be respected, right? To get, if I wear this, I'm going to get respected. The lanes are going to be open.
Yeah.
So are the intentions there? Allahu A'lam. But generally, that could be a positive sign.
Yes.
It could be a trend that lasts for a couple of years, then it goes away and go back to where we were. But nevertheless, at the end of the day, sincerity is something that is hard to achieve. Whatever which way you can get in through the door, it doesn't matter. The main thing is that you stay in the door and you work on your sincerity, even if you came in with the wrong intentions.
Yes.
That's why when the Salaf, he said, طَلَبْنَا الْعِلْمَ لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ فَأَبَى الْعِلْمُ أَنْ يَكُونَ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ. And some of the scholars say majority of people, they enter knowledge, learning knowledge for the wrong reasons, but then they learn to be sincere throughout. So, yeah, even if there's insincerity, people do it because of a trend. That's not necessarily bad. The main thing is that you flip it and become sincere and make it for the sake of Allah.
So all comes down to intentions.
Everything goes back to intentions.
Yes.
إنما الأعمال
بالنيات.
All actions are based off intentions. وَيُحْشَرُ النَّاسُ عَلَى نِيَاتِهِمْ. People will be resurrected based off their intentions, not of your actions.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. You previously mentioned about, having a teacher, Shafi'i even mentions, through the 6 characteristics that you need to have in order for you to attain knowledge at its best. And one of them, he said, suhbatul ustad. Many of us, the only relation maybe that we had with our teachers at a very young age, I don't know about in the United States, but as far as Kenya is concerned, it's always about the cane.
Yeah.
So many of us related the cane with the Quran. And that's maybe one of the reasons many people didn't have a good relationship, with the Quran, even when they were studying the Quran at a young age.
Yeah, so I would say it's a two-way street. We can blame the teachers, yes. They do have a lion's share of the blame, for sure. In the sense that a teacher should not just be a teacher, they should be a mentor. Right? That's why he says suhbatu ustad. Right? There should be mentorship coupled with being a teacher. So there has to be some type of suhbah, for sure. But at the same time, the student got to respect the teacher, even if he doesn't give him that mentorship. من علمني حرفا صرت له عبدا. Whoever teaches me a letter, I'll become their slave for them because he taught you something that is about your belief system and about how you should navigate through your life via Islamic ideals, right? So it's a two-way street, but definitely the teacher should have more of a mentorship approach than just strictly, formal and professional for sure. But yeah, definitely, I would say that's both sides, but mostly the lion's share on the teacher, if that does exist. But also, when you're young, you don't really control that. You just do it. But when you're older, you have an opportunity. You look for a teacher that has that mentorship, that has that tarbiyah murabbi aspect of it, right? You should look for that. Not every teacher has to be that, but you have to have at least one that is like that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so definitely, it's from our tradition that we learn through teachers, and that we don't learn via books. Via books is a secondary matter, or secondary way of learning knowledge, but the primary way is through afwah rijal. It's through the transmission of humans. And as the Prophet ﷺ, he said, تَسْمَعُونَ وَيُسْمَعُ مِنْكُمْ وَيُسْمَعُ مِمَّنْ سَمِعَ مِنْكُمْ. In the hadith narrated by Abu Dawud and others, that you would hear, and others will hear from you, and those that heard from them will be heard from as well. As in, everything is going to be transmitted orally and not just via books. So, in oral, does online come under that?
Yes.
That's a big question. I would say online is a great resource. A lot of people neglect the benefit of online, but it's not enough because there's no human side of it. But it's a really great source. It's, I would say, a halfway point between a book and an actual physical teacher. So it's really nice if somebody can benefit and use technology to that advantage. But as we know, the more advanced we get technologically, the less we become knowledgeable, because when knowledge becomes easy, that route to knowledge is,
there isn't that relationship of a teacher-student.
There isn't that relationship with the teacher-student, and also there is not hard work. Sometimes you work harder when when things are harder to access. But when it's right, easier tips, you kind of become complacent and lazy.
You remind me of the famous Arabic saying, كاد المعلم أن يكون الرسول.
Ahmed Shawqi.
Yes, and with the characteristics of what to be a teacher is, specifically with teaching the Quran, it's very profound. In Surah Al-Rahman, the first ayah, Ar-Rahman, علم القرآن. Even from that, only those two verses, that for you to actually teach and be a teacher, you must have a characteristics to actually be merciful.
Yes.
يرحم من في الأرض يرحمكم من في السماء. Be merciful to the people on the earth, and the one who's in the heavens has gonna have mercy on you.
And the funny thing is that hadith is hadith al-musalsal bil-awwaliyah. It's the first hadith that you learn from a teacher. It's supposed to be this hadith. It's a tradition that's been going on since the time of Sufyan ibn Uyayna, right? Who died in the year 198 from Mecca. He said it to one of his students, and one of his students says, وَهُوَ أَوَّلُ حَدِيثٍ سَمِعْتُهُ مِنْهُ. And it says, first, ارحموا من في الأرض يرحمكم من في السماء. Have mercy on those, Allah will have mercy on you. SubhanAllah. It's the first hadith that has been going on for 1200 years. Hadith of Abdullahi ibn Amr ibn As. So it's interesting that you make that correlation, that teacher of the Quran should have rahmah.
Yes.
And this hadith happens to be the hadith that it's supposed to be the first hadith you learn from your teacher.
It's never a coincidence with the Quran. Never a coincidence.
Definitely. Allah grant us that mercy.
Ameen ya Rabb. Ameen ya Rabb. So Sheikh, you have, I believe you have an academy going on that you've recently launched called D1. Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, it's a curriculum project. Right? One thing we noticed over the years is that been teaching people who don't know Arabic using classical texts. You're spending a lot of time translating, and a lot of issues that require more Arabic is kind of difficult to explain, and you start translating, and then by the time you get done translating, you lose sight. So we decided to come up with customized curriculum, and we've been doing it for a few years. Then we decided to, a few institutions reached out, they wanted to use it, and then we decided to make it into a whole project. We've been working on it for a few years now. So it's a soft launch now, but alhamdulillah, a number of institutions have been
is it like, is it curriculum based, or is it just?
It's curriculum based. It's a curriculum. It's a rigorous curriculum, first of its kind for sure, that goes through all the major subjects in Islam: fiqh, aqidah, tazkiyah, Islamic history, قصص الأنبياء, سير النبوية, أعلام الأمة, تفسير, علوم القرآن, مصطلح الحديث, حديث, أصول الفقه, آيات الأحكام, حديث الأحكام, all of these subjects in a very progressional way where it fits in Islamic schools, elementary, middle, and high schools, and also fits in weekend schools and ma'ahid and marakiz in different ways. So the detailed is kind of, it's like a whole presentation going through every subject. But the way we set it up in a way is that it goes from lower to higher. So from beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And a person really, when he finishes the curriculum, ideally they'll be learning Arabic at the same time. Then they can move on to the classical books. So it's a bridge while they're learning the Arabic language so that they can benefit from, and it's written in a modern style. So we hope that the Muslim Ummah could benefit from it.
Is it age restricted?
I don't think it's age restricted. I think adults can benefit from it as well, because the content is very rigorous, and we believe that we should raise the standards of knowledge. We shouldn't lower the standards of knowledge. People should be raised, not lowered, because when you lower it, people are going to be even lower. All right, so we raise it, and we hope people get to that level, and if they don't get to that level, at least they reach somewhere close. إذا غامرت في شرف المنون فلا تقنع بما دون النجوم. Aim for the moon. At least if you don't get to the moon, you reach the stars. Right? You know, don't put a roof on yourself. So we try to raise
aspirations.
You have to have high aspirations. You know, so have high aspirations from a young age. Let them learn difficult concepts. I mean, they do it in the secular world.
Yes.
You're doing mathematics. You're doing trigonometry as young as 12 years old, 11 years old, and algebra and pre-calculus. You're doing these subjects, physics and chemistry.
Yes.
They can do the same thing when it comes to the Islamic subjects. It just requires people to take that. So the rigorousness is needed, because if we want to bring our honor back in Islam, we have to go back to the high level. The whole world is advancing from every single perspective.
Yes.
And us Muslims, we can't even produce a single car, except for a couple countries. We can't even put together, all right? We can't develop anything. And one of the reasons is because our identity is in shambles. Ilm for us is something that is a side mission on a Saturday or Sunday, or we send the dumb kids to learn the Sharia, all right? When we should be sending the smartest ones to learn the Sharia, because they're going to be the ones that are influencing the entire Ummah.
Exactly.
They're the ones impacting the entire Ummah. So we're trying to raise the level of people, inshallah ta'ala, via this curriculum. Hopefully, inshallah ta'ala, Allah keep us sincere in it.
MashaAllah. So the end goal is to actually produce high impactful da'is in the near future. It doesn't necessarily need to be da'is, but whatever field that they might be in the future. They can be a doctor, they can be a pilot, but they still, hold that Muslim identity.
Ya salam, Allah yaftah alayk. Yeah, so that's the goal, that every Muslim, whether young or old, who goes through this curriculum, inshallah ta'ala, should have that aspiration to give da'wah, all right? Because you have to have knowledge to give da'wah. It's one of the two conditions of giving da'wah. One of them is knowledge. So you have a base level of knowledge that you can operate from, and that you can use in your personal life, and you can pass it on to the others. Whether you're a doctor, lawyer, engineer, whatever field you go into, at least you have a base level of knowledge of Islam that you can give to the non-Muslims. And this is something that we neglect, unfortunately, giving da'wah to non-Muslims, and this is something that is an obligation amongst us. Especially, I know this country is a majority non-Muslim country. I come from a country that is not majority non-Muslim country, so I'm sure many of the listeners that come from non-Muslim countries, with the exception of a few, very important. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'izati al hasana wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan." Ud'u is fi'l amr, all right? And kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat lin-nas ta'muruna bil ma'ruf wa tanhauna 'anil munkari wa tu'minuna billah. So you're the greatest ummah to be ever brought out to this world. Why? Right? What is the reason? تَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, you're enjoying the good. And the most important in joining the good, the most important is calling to the way of Allah Azza wa Jal, which is what our brothers are doing in the Dawah Center. Shout out to the Dawah Center. May Allah reward them immensely. Just this week they were telling me 34 people accepted Islam.
Yes.
That is incredible. And not only do they accept Islam, they're brought to the center and they're taught Islam. So it's a funnel system. So they don't just accept Islam, mashallah, pictures, they became Muslim, you forget about it. They actually bring them here which is something that is unique. Not many da'wah initiatives do that.
Yes.
So that's something that is great. So ta'muruna bil ma'ruf, the greatest ma'ruf that a person can command is tawheed.
Yes.
Has anyone ever thought of talking to their neighbor, coworker, anybody that they deal with, calling them to the way of Allah Azza wa Jal? وَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ, you forbid them from evil. Right?
Yes. And the
وَتَدْعُونَ
most
إِلَى
evil
اللَّهِ.
is shirk.
And the most evil is shirk, is polytheism, which, is something that is prevalent in the world today, right? And وتدعون يعني you give da'wah, right? وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ. There should be amongst you from the ummah that give da'wah to the khayr, right? So we should all be involved in giving da'wah.
One way or another.
One way or the other. And
whether in a taxi, whether, you're in a restaurant,
anywhere.
بلغوا
عني ولو آية. But it's better to give. بلغوا عني ولو آية is preach even if it's just one verse. But you have to know that verse to begin with. So you have to have some type of knowledge. So that's one of the two conditions of da'wah. And the other condition is معرفة حال المدعوين, is to know the situation of the people you're dealing with. So you have to know what to do, what to say, cultural norms, societal norms. Don't be too overly aggressive. Don't be too passive. Kind of have that social intelligence of how to spread the da'wah, because you don't want to ruin it by not having those social cues, right?
Yes.
So
you just mentioned now بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة.
Yes.
With wisdom and profound ways in terms of your speech.
Yes, Allah yaftah alayk. Ud'u li sabil. Allah commands us to give da'wah bil hikmah, with wisdom. And wisdom is knowing when to say, what to say at the right time, at the right place, at the right era. Right? وضع الشيء في موضعه, right? Doing something at the right time. That's wisdom.
That's the definition of hikmah.
That's something very different. Something that's very different from knowledge, right?
Yes.
There's knowledge. Some people, mashallah, they have knowledge, but they have no wisdom. They're like a car, all gas, no brakes. He gets into an accident on the highway, running through trees and houses, right?
Reckless.
And then there's people that are very passive. They never give da'wah because they don't have any ilm. They're all brake. Guys parked in a parking lot.
Yeah.
You gotta have some gas and some brake to reach your destination.
Exactly, true.
You gotta know when to gas.
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both, right? You gotta know when to be in the fast lane, when to be in the slow lane to exit, right, to reach your destination. So bil hikmah, with wisdom, wal mu'adhatul hasana, you have to have a great way of speaking. وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي أَحْسَنُ, debate them. Like if you find someone that actually has some knowledge and some back and forth, make sure you debate them بِالَّتِي أَحْسَنُ, in an ethical way. Don't do it in a, like sometimes when we debate, we become personal. We start, swearing and cussing and getting mad and getting loud, and it gets ugly. No, you shouldn't get into that. And it's a last resort, right? After wisdom, and then good speech. Then after that, if you have to debate, you debate, and you debate in a very ethical way. So even the way of da'wah is discussed in this ayah. But you have to have knowledge. قُلْ هَذِهِ سَبِيلِي أَدْعُو إِلَى اللَّهِ عَلَى بَصِيرَةٍ أَنَا وَمَنِ اتَّبَعَنِي. Allah, the Prophet ﷺ give da'wah ala basira, based off of knowledge. You have to have insight. Basira is knowledge combined with insight, which is the wisdom. So you have to have basira. You have to know, so little by little. Like sometimes we give da'wah to a person, we give them a list of to-dos and to not do's and don'ts. It don't work like that.
Yeah,
right?
It doesn't work like that.
It don't work like that.
SubhanAllah, you just reminded me, even with Musa alayhi salam, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded him to go to Fir'aun, he made sure to actually remind Musa alayhi salam that he should be kind and gentle with his words. Perhaps he may remember, or have some khashya, some fear of Allah, so that his heart can actually be soft with the reminder. So if that is with Fir'aun, what about the other people?
Wallah, it's true. The guy who said, "Ana rabbukum al-ala," I am the Lord the Most High. I mean, how many people in the world today would say, "I am God"? Not a lot of people would say that. Not a lot of people would have that. Like
many claim to be prophets, but I've never seen anyone saying.
Nobody says, "I am God." That's rare. I mean, you never know. In the 21st century, there might be people out there. So don't quote me on it. I don't know what goes on the dark side of the internet. It's possible, but it's rare. It's more rare than common, right? So he had the audacity to say, "I am Lord Most High." By that, Allah Azza wa Jalla said, فَقُولَ لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا. I say to him a gentle, lenient speech. So you have to be lenient in terms of giving da'wah. But a lot of us, we don't even have that mentality to give da'wah. Like, we have our own issues, and that's the goal, inshallah ta'ala. Of people learning And and it's just one of those projects. We just encourage everybody to learn in whichever way, shape, or form. And this is definitely one of the ways we hope that it becomes a means for people to learn and also pass on that knowledge to non-Muslims and Muslims alike. Muslims need dawah as well, right?
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. Wallahi, Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. It has been nice having you here and looking forward to another episode sooner or later, inshallah.
جزاكم الله خيرا.
بارك الله فيكم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. See you on the next episode on Dawah Center. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.